Most people think overthinking is a weakness, a mental flaw, an annoying habit, or even a sign of being indecisive. But what if it's actually something deeper, something most people don't even realize? You see, overthinking is often misunderstood. It's not simply about thinking too much. It's about feeling too much, caring too deeply, and trying to control a world that often feels uncontrollable. When someone constantly replays conversations, imagines worst-case scenarios, or overanalyzes every decision, it usually means they're trying to prepare themselves, emotionally, for pain, rejection, or disappointment. It's a shield, not a flaw. A shield built from past experiences, unresolved wounds, or moments where things went wrong unexpectedly. Overthinking isn't random. It's a response, and that response often comes from people who've had to think for survival. What most don't understand is that overthinkers are usually the ones who notice everything, every shift in tone, every unsaid word, every flicker in someone's eyes. They're not paranoid. They're observant, hyper observant. And this comes from years of emotional sensitivity and environmental scanning. Perhaps growing up, they had to walk on eggshells around emotionally unpredictable people. Or maybe they learned that mistakes, even small ones, came with big consequences. So now, even as adults, they dissect every situation, every word, and every outcome, because deep down, they are afraid of repeating the past. Their mind becomes a battlefield between what was, what is, and what might be, not because they enjoy it, but because their nervous system has been trained to expect impact. Overthinking, then, isn't overreacting, it's overprotecting. In truth, overthinking everything often indicates you're extremely intelligent, not just in the logical sense, but emotionally, socially, and intuitively. Overthinkers tend to be highly empathetic individuals who pick up on subtleties others overlook. They imagine every scenario not because they want to stress themselves out, but because their brain is trying to prepare for every outcome. Ironically, overthinking stems from a desire for peace, peace in relationships, peace in choices, peace in their future. But peace is rarely guaranteed, and so the mind runs endlessly, trying to calculate safety. Intelligence isn't always loud or confident. Sometimes it's silent and restless, trapped inside a mind that can't seem to find the off switch. But this intelligence, when understood and channeled, can be a gift, a way to deeply connect with people, notice the things that matter, and make decisions with deep thoughtfulness. Many people who overthink are actually deeply moral, value-driven people. They want to do what's right, not just for themselves, but for others. They replay conversations because they don't want to hurt anyone. They rehearse apologies, draft texts they never send, or lie awake wondering if they accidentally offended someone. This doesn't mean they're insecure. It means they have a high level of emotional responsibility. They take accountability even when they weren't at fault, because the idea of being careless with someone's feelings terrifies them. Overthinking is often a form of silent integrity. The world might dismiss them as too sensitive or too emotional, but in reality, they are deeply attuned to emotional consequences, and they carry the weight of their actions more seriously than most. Overthinking also indicates that you're probably someone who's experienced betrayal or broken trust at some point in your life, and not just once. When you've trusted people who didn't deserve it, or believed in outcomes that ended in disappointment, your brain starts creating mental safety plans. You begin to imagine everything that could go wrong, not to sabotage yourself, but to soften the impact if it does. It's a coping mechanism, a way to never be caught off guard again. This makes relationships hard, decisions hard. Even rest becomes difficult because your mind is always scanning for risk. Overthinking becomes your brain's way of saying, I remember what happened last time, and I won't let it happen again. It's exhausting, yes, but it also means you're someone who has survived pain and is now trying to survive peace too. There's something else too. Overthinking often indicates you're highly imaginative. Your mind isn't just replaying facts, it's building worlds. You create alternate endings, imaginary outcomes, different timelines. This is the same mental muscle that artists, writers, and philosophers use, the ability to imagine beyond the present. Overthinking is not only tied to trauma, it's also tied to creativity. You think deeply because you feel deeply, and though that can become heavy, it also makes you a person of depth. While others skim the surface, you live in the depths of thought, of emotion, of possibility. That's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to understand and maybe even protect. The most surprising truth: overthinking everything often indicates that you're someone who wants control, not because you're a control freak, but because you were raised or shaped in situations where control was taken from you. When you've been in chaos, you crave structure. When your emotions weren't safe, you try to analyze them into submission. Control, for an overthinker, is a form of emotional safety. It's not about manipulating outcomes. It's about protecting the inner child who still fears being blindsided. So you plan every possibility, play every scenario, calculate every move, just so you don't feel helpless again. And that deserves compassion, not judgment. Because even though overthinking can feel like a mental prison, it's also evidence of your will to stay safe in a world that often wasn't. Perhaps the most profound and overlooked truth about overthinking is this: it isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a reflection that you care. Not casually, not lightly, but deeply, almost unbearably so. You care about people, about conversations, about relationships, about how you are perceived, and about how you make others feel. You care about the decisions you make, the impact of your words, and the consequences of your actions, even when nobody is watching. You care in a way that sometimes becomes a burden because the weight of caring too much is rarely celebrated. It's often misunderstood as anxiety, emotional instability, or even weakness, but in reality, it's compassion stretched to its mental limits. For overthinkers, caring isn't just an emotion, it's an entire internal system that never shuts off. A conversation doesn't end when it ends. It gets replayed, dissected, and re-examined in the quiet corners of your mind. A minor conflict doesn't pass. It echoes. A facial expression, a pause, a text message with a slightly different tone. It all gets logged, analyzed, and emotionally processed. Because when you care, nothing feels insignificant. Even silence feels loud. Even "it's nothing" feels like something. And so your mind keeps spinning, not to create chaos, but to understand, to fix, to prevent pain, for yourself and for others. At its core, this kind of overthinking is rooted in a desire to be a good person, a truly good person, someone who doesn't harm, who doesn't disappoint, who doesn't take their presence in someone's life lightly. It's why you over-apologize. It's why you ask, "Are you sure?" even after being reassured. It's why you sit with guilt long after you've been forgiven, and why you stay awake at night, wondering if that one sentence you said in passing hurt someone more than you realized. It's not that you're fragile, it's that you're emotionally precise. You want to get it right. You need to get it right, because for you, kindness isn't optional, it's instinctive. And that level of care, though beautiful, often becomes overwhelming. But this kind of care, the obsessive kind, the all-consuming kind, doesn't come from nowhere. It's often shaped by experience. Maybe you've lived through emotional unpredictability, where one wrong word changed everything. Maybe you were once the peacemaker in a turbulent environment, forced to read moods and walk on eggshells to keep things from falling apart. Or maybe you were simply never made to feel safe in your expression, so you learned to filter every word, every gesture, every emotion. Not because you were dishonest, but because being careful was the only way to feel secure. And now, that pattern has become part of how you love, how you exist, how you survive. Overthinking isn't just a behavior, it's a language you speak fluently, one born from the need to make the world emotionally safer, one calculation at a time. People often say, "Don't overthink it," as if it's just a switch you can turn off, as if your mind doesn't run through every possibility because it needs to, for peace of mind, for emotional survival. What they don't see is that this constant thinking, rethinking, analyzing, doubting, it comes from how much you care and how afraid you are of getting it wrong. Not because you need to be perfect, but because you never want to be the reason someone else feels hurt, rejected, or unloved. And because of that, you carry a level of emotional responsibility that most people never even consider. You check on others when no one checks on you. You say sorry when you're not at fault. You forgive without apology, and you love without guarantees, because you feel everything, even what's unspoken. But this care, this exhausting, tender, sometimes paralyzing care, also comes with a cost. Your mind becomes noisy, always processing. Your emotions become heavy, always questioning. Your confidence wavers, not because you don't believe in your goodness, but because you're too aware of how easy it is to unintentionally hurt someone, and that awareness never leaves. It turns joy into hesitation. It turns freedom into pressure. And slowly, you begin to wonder if there's something wrong with you. But here's what you need to understand. This overthinking, this depth of care, is not brokenness. It's evidence of how much heart you carry. It's the overflow of emotional intelligence in a world that often numbs itself to avoid vulnerability. So no, overthinking isn't a flaw you need to fix. It's not a personality defect or a sign that you're too much. It's a reflection of your emotional capacity, a byproduct of your empathy, a side effect of your sincerity. And while, yes, it needs balance, it doesn't need shame. It needs understanding, compassion, gentleness. It needs you to stop punishing yourself for being a person who feels more than most. Because in a world full of indifference, your overthinking heart might be exhausting, but it's also rare and deeply human. Maybe, just maybe, you don't need to overthink less. You just need to trust yourself more and give your beautiful, overactive mind the permission to rest in the truth that caring deeply is never something to regret.